Welcome to Matador Memories, the podcast that explores CSUN's history and its impact on the community. I'm your host, Carmen Ramos Chandler, and with me today is CSUN legend, kinesiology professor emeritus Sam Britten, who founded our Center for Achievement through Adaptive Physical Activity and the Abbot and Linda Brown Weston Center for Adaptive Aquatic Therapy, which we all on campus call the Brown Center and forget it's got a very long name with it. Sam, thank you for joining us.
My privilege.
Today we want to talk about the origins of the Center for Adaptive Physical Activity and the Brown Center, because you started those, but those started with an idea. Tell me how it all began.
Well, it probably began in my mind as a undergraduate at UCLA. I was attending UCLA on a football scholarship and had a serious injury. Ended up in the athletic training room and introduced to the whole field of rehabilitation. And because of the seriousness of the injury, also introduced to adapted physical education in the kinesiology department there. And so that began my curiosity about obviously wanting to improve my own situation, but very interested in all the things that were going around me, just curiosity. And so I had an opportunity to meet some very special people that kind of directed my life from there. Dr. Logan, who was director of the adaptive program at UCLA, was a very engaging gentleman and had sparked a pretty exciting program. We were getting Korean veterans back, and like all of our schools in those days, the colleges and universities had requirements. First 2 years for physical activity requirement. And so there were a lot of people with some pretty serious disabilities in his program, and I got mingled in with them as I was rehabilitating my own situation. So I became very interested in the field and perhaps was drawn to the personality of Dr. Logan, and he encouraged me in the field. And so I ended up taking a trial class to explore my ideas in introduction to rehabilitation. That was the beginning of all of this. And so I happened to be able to get in on some very special situations working with blind students. Never had known a blind person in my life, and suddenly I was with 40 blind students working for a whole semester break down in the Gulf of Mexico, now California. And I was just blown away. I could not believe the normalcy. I expected such disability in my mind, but these young people were true overcomers, and I was so impressed with that. I was drawn to that. And so that was kind of the beginning of my exploration. I became very good friends with Dr. Charles Lohman, who was the director of the orthopedic hospital. And we became actually swimming buddies because he would come up to UCLA and we'd go swimming together. He invited me to take place, and he was very involved with the postural program for LA City Schools. And he says, why don't you come along and be my assistant? And so he broke me into the whole school system, of what they were doing there, and into the adapted physical education program in the schools. That resulted in, there was a school that was named after Dr. Lohman. Dr. Lohman's School for the Disabled out in the valley. And he told me the history of that. He said they wanted me to, because he was so involved with school children, he wanted me to, or the school wanted to name a school after him. And he was very, I guess, impressed with that idea. But he said, I'll only allow you to do that if you put it in a therapy pool for the children. No therapy pool had ever been built in Los Angeles for the school system. That was a whole new idea. But apparently the council did approve it because Lohman had a very significant name in LA City school system, and so they built a therapy pool for the kids. And the school was primarily ministering to severely involved kids with cerebral palsy mostly. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, I had been down to the Children's Hospital, and he introduced me to a pool that he'd set up in Children's Hospital inside, mm-hmm. and invited me to participate in that program very briefly, just for a week or so. And anyway, when the school came about, he called me on the phone and he said, Sam, I want you to go out to the Lohman School. They built this pool out there. Nobody knows how to use it. And he said, it's just sitting there idle, and I can't handle that. He said, I need somebody to go out there and teach the teachers how to work with these disabled children. So that was very challenging and exciting for me. So I headed over there, and there was this beautiful therapy pool. And so one by one, we worked with the teachers and the students to set up a beautiful program for these children. And that's when I became really enamored with pool therapy.
So you went on and got your PhD, and how did you end up in CSUN? Because that's when you brought those ideas here.
Well, from that experience, and after I finished my master's degree, I was called to a new school out here called San Fernando Valley, just become San Fernando Valley, to do the very thing that I've been studying the whole time at UCLA, that is to set up an adaptive physical education curriculum for the majors in the kinesiology department, and also design an activity program to accommodate this 2-year requirement for students who were classified unable to participate in regular physical activity. They also needed a classification system, which they didn't have, and I had experienced that at UCLA, and so they wanted me to bring the UCLA classification system over. So I worked with Addie Klotz, and we set that up, and with Addie in the health center, and so I was involved in that. And then on top of that, they said, by the way, we also want you to develop the athletic training program. We need an athletic trainer. We're going to be building a building. We need to have you design the facilities for that, and also for your adapted area. So I had quite a challenge.
Yeah. We're talking the late 50s, early 60s?
This was, I was hired in the fall of 1959. And so the next few years were very, very busy because everything was new, mm-hmm. but everything very exciting. And so we proceeded to develop this program, curriculum, and classification system. And in the beginning, it was primarily just working with injured athletes, some arthritis patients or students, obesity, mild, moderate kinds of physical conditions. I think my first class I had 8 students. So as we continued in that program, it began to grow, and there were more and more students, but no one of any serious consequence in terms of physical abilities. And so I was just kind of floating along status quo, happy to be in the program, happy to see our whole department develop, and of course our building get built and that sort of thing. So,
But when did we start inviting the community to take advantage of the skills that our students and you or your colleagues have?
that was the result a little bit later, after I had been introduced very unexpectedly to a very severe handicapped young lady who had cerebral palsy. This was long before
EDA?
the bill, the federal requirement, accessibility. So CSUN hadn't planned for a wheelchair campus.
Yeah.
And so there were no one on campus in wheelchairs, or no one with any serious disability. There was no accessibility to speak of. Somehow this young lady got to my class, though. And she arrived at, I think, in the late 60s or early 70s. Lillian Bixby, I'll never forget her. You probably did a story on her somewhere along the line.
I remember her.
Yeah. What a special lady she was. So exuberant. So that's such an abdominal spirit. You just couldn't say no to her. Yet here she was, tied up in a real knot. She couldn't move, basically, to do anything functionally. And I admitted to her, I said, look, I want to help you, but I'm not sure that I have any answers to help you, but I will try. And so I spent that weekend in research, looking at everything I could find to do with cerebral palsy, remembering all the time about these pools and how wonderful these pools were for these kids. But I didn't have a pool. But I did have some ideas, because I had done a lot of research in muscle physiology and reflexes to stimulate movement. So I met with Lillian. I said, Lillian, if you will work with me and you will allow me to experiment with some of my ideas. She said, yes, 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 I'll do anything. I just want to get out of this body that I'm in and want to be able to. I said, what are your goals? She says, I'm crying out to be able to take care of myself. All my life, everybody's taken care of me. I want to take care of myself. And that was very compelling, a very emotional time. I wanted it for her, too. She was such a precious, precious soul. And so we began to work. And I began to apply some of the techniques that I thought might have some impact on her. She began to improve. She began to develop some control. Before long, she was able to comb her hair, even wash her teeth. And simple things that we take for granted, but they were like world-changing to her.
Milestones, yeah.
Very much so. Each semester, she would come in with a new objective, something she wanted to achieve. Until finally, in her, I think, senior year, she was a very attractive young lady, you may recall. And she attracted a young man in the process, and he actually wanted to marry her. And so this was an unusual situation, and she came to me and she says, please, please help me to walk, because I want to walk down the aisle and surprise my groom. And I says, that's something we have never done before, Lillian. This is going to be a new challenge for sure. Well, we took on the challenge, and she had the spirit to fight through it. We actually managed to get her up in a walker, and she walked down the aisle and was married. After she was married, she came back and said, now that I'm married, next on my list, I want to be able to drive a van. And I said, now, Lillian, you're a little out of your mind now. This is not, I mean, you've done a wonderful thing. You've accomplished a great deal. But driving, I don't think so. She said, you believe in me, don't you? I says, I sure do. We're going to drive again. She told me. Well, believe it or not, 2 years later, Lillian drove one of the first converted vans that this valley had ever seen. And the whole business of van conversion began as a result of that experience. So we worked with a couple of engineers that were very interested, and we spent 2 years on that project. She drove a van, and in her very last semester, she said, now that I can drive, I want to be able to take care of my household, and so let's just work on very practical, functional things. And we did. We never got to the pools, but we somehow managed to work through this extreme disabling condition, and that was so inspiring to me. But in the meantime, I had seen a lot of other students come along the way. We were building our program. Probably by that time, we had maybe 80 students. And there was a lot.
In the physical therapy, kinesiology.
There were in the program, the adaptive program, it was gaining because of publicity, primarily because of your department and stories that got out. Well, Lillian, of course, was a big thing in the valley. So she got daily news, did stories. Dennis
McCarthy.
McCarthy did stories on her. So the word was out. Now, every time you folks do publicity on our program, our phones rang off the hook. And so the program began to build as a result of that. Well, we didn't have a way of taking in. They had to be enrolled students. So it wasn't until some of our more disabled students graduated and went out into the community and couldn't find a way to continue on. The gym, there were gyms out there where everybody else could go to a gym, but not a person in a wheelchair or a disabled person. And so I'll never forget, I think there was a story even done on Joe Zelinas. I don't know if you remember that name. But Joe Zelinas came back to me begging me to take in people from the community because they're not accepted. He said, you got us up to where we can function, and now we can't continue it. What are we going to do? And so my department allowed me to say, well, let's explore that possibility. And so we looked into it, and there were other centers already on campus at that point. So we applied to be chartered, and in 1989, we were actually a chartered center, became a chartered center. And of course, then there was a lot of publicity that opened up to the community, and a waiting list began to form very quickly. We still have that waiting list? Is that part of the...
Oh, yeah.
Yes, well, that waiting list over the next 20-some years just kind of grew. The program grew, facility expanded, but even in all the things that we were doing with various disabilities, there was something missing. There was that gnawing thought in my mind, we can do more. There's so much more that we can offer if we only had an aquatic facility. Because that introduces a whole new medium of function. It's a warm water environment. It's the buoyancy of the water. It's a healing environment. It's a calming environment. And we needed that for so many of our disabilities. I mean, we were doing great. We had a walking program. We had all kinds of interesting things going on, people achieving a lot of wonderful things. Of course, the environment of the center is so unique anyway, and that it's so encouraging. It's, well, like I say, center of achievement, right?
Yeah.
So people were achieving, but in my mind, I thought they could achieve more. There's more we could do. They would get close to walking, but not quite there. If only they had the buoyancy of water to help them. That type of thing kept going in my mind. And so I talked to my dean about it. It was Dean Lynn Glass at the time. And he said, I love it, Sam. He says, all the things you're doing up there, he says, why not a pool?
Why not a pool?
Yeah, right. And
now I got to find the money.
for sure. Well, I started out with a small grant, and I got 2 whirlpools there.
I remember,
Yeah. And so in experimenting with the whirlpools, we found some new techniques and applications. Like, for example, a coal pool would benefit multiple sclerosis. You know, I said, oh, wow, what a difference it made to put them in this cooler environment, and suddenly their body can be more functional and function in a normal way. So we discovered that. And the department gave me an opportunity to investigate and evaluate adaptive aquatic facilities all over the United States. So for 6 months, I took off with my family. We traveled around to all of these institutions and schools that had programs with aquatic therapy or adaptive aquatic therapy. And there was just a whole bunch of different ideas. And so we tried to take the best of every opportunity that presented itself and come back and put it on the drawing board.
What was on the dream list?
Well, the agreement...
No, the dream list.
Oh, the dream list. Oh. Well, the dream list, we had, of course, discovered underwater equipment, such as whirlpool. I didn't know, treadmills.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was such a thing as an underwater treadmill. We found them at a racetrack. There were rehabilitation pools for horses. We visited that in Kentucky. And we thought, what a great idea. Underwater treadmills for humans. Anyway, so we didn't see any of that except for horses. But we put that on the list. We want that for humans. And then there were underwater current machines. So we put that in the list. It was very important to have dry ramp transfers so that paraplegics could transfer themselves into the water because of their upper body strength without help. We needed, obviously, lifts, different kinds of lifts. We need the right kind of stairs that would take people in and out. The ultimate goal would be to, however we got them in the pool, the goal is to be able to walk out of the pool in time. So those were the ideas of some of the equipment that we had on the lists. And, of course, then the creation of the different kinds of pools. We came across a movable floor pool, which, oh, my goodness, it just absolutely blew our mind. When we saw there are 3 of them in the United States. We visited 2 of them. We were so impressed with them. But they were made in Germany. But that went on the list. We had to have a movable floor because then we could deal with children. We could start at any level and all the way from 0 level to 7 feet. We could take that floor down and accommodate infants and mommies and children, little children with disabilities. We could also do deep water rehabilitation with hip repairs and those kinds of things. So that had to be on the list. And then, of course, the main therapy pool is what we saw mostly in our visits. We visited about 8 of those around the country. Not associated with any college or university. They were all independent organizations, Jewish organizations, YMCAs, things like that. So it was interesting the schools had not moved in that direction at all, none that we could find.
Yeah, no ADA yet, no
Yeah.
Americans with Disabilities Act.
Yeah, so there were not that many people on campuses that were even disabled. So this was just a population in isolation, mainly in their homes and their institutions. And so all these things were revealed. So it was pretty amazing that my dean was so bold to advance this idea, even to the extent that we flew back to Washington, D.C. We made arrangements to meet with President Reagan and tell him about our plan, our program, our drawings, our pool. He had a special meeting, and he had to cancel us. So we didn't get to see him. But I do have a letter that he wrote me. An apology. Buck McKeon was very instrumental in
I
helping
remember
us.
Buck.
And
He came to the opening.
he did. Yeah, well, he was instrumental in getting us the first big grant, $1 million grant from the government. So that really charged us up. I had raised about $3 million up to that point with fundraisers and that sort of thing. And Art Donnelly, who was in our program, a quadriplegic for an accident, was so charged up. He said he found his life all over again by coming to the center. And his friend was Buck McKeon, and so we reunited with Buck McKeon, and he came to the center, and he said, we're going to get some money for this project. So he managed to get $1 million for us. So that gave us a big charge. And we were ready to start the program, a building, but prices kept going up and up. We were 8 years in the fundraising project, so, and 8 years costs just kept getting ahead of us. So what was going to be originally a $3.5 million project became a $4.5 million project, which became a $6+ million project.
I remember.
And so it just seemed like even I was getting discouraged.
And you didn't act like it.
And I didn't act like it, but I was discouraged. My heart was so into this, and I just knew we could help so many people. I was working with Frank Fitano. He was a wonderful man, and he and his wife, faithful wife, they would come every day. He was in a terrible motorcycle accident. Big man. He lost the use of his legs. And we had been working for probably 2 years on braces because we'd already developed some muscle activity around his hip. So we felt like if we could get his legs braced, he could be taught how to swing his legs. We could have a swing gait pattern. And he worked so hard, but never lost his courage, or if he ever got disappointed, he never let me know. He was always so happy, and his wife, they were both so joyful to be around, so happy to be at the center. Well, one afternoon, and I just working with him personally because I really wanted to help them so badly, we had received a new prosthetic device that had automation attached to it. So we were there working in the lab with that particular apparatus. And over in the corner, someone came into the room. I didn't hardly even notice it initially, but it was Dean Stutz. She brought Linda Brown to visit our center because Ann was very involved with our fundraising project. She was very into and wanted to see it happen. So she would bring people to the program to try to encourage donations. Well, they stood in the corner and watched us, just the two of us. It was after classes. We were working just independently. He, his wife, and myself. We were using this new apparatus. And he began to take his first steps. And talk about joy. And the room just lit up. It brings tears to my eyes just remembering that moment. His wife started to cry, and I started to cry, and we were all hugging each other. Well, this was a God thing, because this lady was there, and she saw this take place. They left. I didn't even meet her. 2 days later, Ann called me on the phone. She said, "We visited you 2 days ago. I don't know if you saw us or not." I said, "Well, I thought I kind of glanced over and saw somebody. I thought it was you, but I wasn't sure." I said, "I was so into what I was doing. I'm sorry I didn't get over to meet you." She says, "Okay, it's okay. You were doing something much more important." But she said, the lady I had, Linda Brown, her husband had been making donations to his schools. This is her alma mater, and she wanted to do something at her school. I said, "Wonderful." I didn't anticipate what she was going to say next. She said, "She wants to build a pool for you." I think I dropped the phone. I couldn't believe what she was. "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, not the whole pool," but she said she wants to see you finish this project. She believes in this project. And she's going to invite her husband over to see your project. And so I said, "Well, what are we talking about?" She said, "I think they're talking about $1.5 million." I said, "Wow, that's up to $5.5 million." I said, "We're almost there." And then talk about an exciting day for me to think that this thing might really happen now. So this is what was the final
push, wasn't it?
Where are you going to get the rest of the money to finish it? And okay, you're just going to have to cut something, Sam. Go back and start cutting until you can get this thing down to $5.5 million. And I said, "I've already whittled it down. I don't. If I cut somebody, some disability gets left out." I said, "No, I'm not going to cut it. It's got to be like this, because I want everybody is inclusive. We can't leave anybody out." They were trying to say the cool pool isn't that important. I said, "You mean the people that have multiple sclerosis, they're not important? Tell them they're not that important." "Well, maybe there's something else. How about the reception area?" I said, "Oh, so you're going to cut out all now the parents and the spouses and the caretakers who are there with their loved ones, bringing them and wanting them to see and produce." And I said, "This is where they learn how to take care of this is a class all in of itself. These people share with each other. It's all part of the process." Wow. What else can you cut? I said, "I don't know, maybe I can cut some of the tile off." Dr. Kester called and said, "Sam, we're not going to cut anything. We're going to build that facility because Linda just called and she's going to give you another $500,000. Well, I don't think I slept for a few days. It was really going to happen. I even get emotional about it now to think that it was really going to happen, because I knew so much help. And we had such a long waiting list. We could double the numbers of people that we serve, and the students would learn so much more.
I think people forget when we talk about these centers is that students were learning how to be they were learning to be great physical therapists.
Absolutely.
They were the ones who were working with the clients.
Yeah, their lives were were not only accumulating all this knowledge, but they were developing a thought process that the possibility for these people is untapped. That there's so much more could be accomplished, and it can be done if I, the teacher, understand how to go about doing this and become the propagator of this information. And so students were just as joyful as the clients. And this is what we see at the center today. I think there's as much excitement among the students as there are among the clients themselves, because everyone wins. It's a win-win situation. The students learn, the clients, of course, get the benefit from their input in their lives, and lifelong friends take place at that place.
Do you remember the day we held the grand opening of the Brown Aquatic Center? Do you remember that day?
I sure do.
I remember you couldn't stop grinning. You could not stop grinning. We were outside in front of the Brown Center. We had media there. We had people in the audience. And you acted as MC. And there were tours all afternoon.
Yes. Yeah, my students were conducting tours at every facility. And, that was a joyous occasion. And I don't remember, I brought along a picture of my favorite picture that I have.
I want to see it.
Of course.
Oh, I remember that.
You did that.
Yeah, I did.
This is my favorite book. And it's full of, you did stories in here. They're just marvelous things. But there was a picture here, and I'm not sure when this took place, if I can find it. Oh, here it is.
Oh, yeah. Yep, I remember that.
Well, Dr. Kester presented this plaque, and I was so proud. She said, "For your leadership, dedication, and inspiration to the CSUN community since 1959, it says, do not follow where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." And that is a quote, of course, by Ralph Waldo Emerson. But I love that picture. I love that plaque, because that's what we did. We made our own path. No other college or university had this kind of a program. This was pioneer stuff.
Do you remember how you felt the first time you saw those pools in actual use, that you had clients and student therapists working with them?
It was a very wonderful, exciting day. There were so many pictures taken, and every pool had its unique opportunity to express itself with the unique clients in each pool. And everybody in the pool, they were first entering the pool, it was kind of like a little bit of heaven for everybody, I think. And so it was just a very exhilarating time.
I remember going one of the tours before the grand opening, and you were ecstatic to demonstrate the pool in which the ground goes up. And you kept talking about the possibilities of working with children in that pool, because it rose up and it rose down, and you hit the lever that there was no one in the pool at the moment, but you hit the lever to show how it worked. And then you demonstrated how the lift would swing out, how someone could get in the lift and it would swing out, and how they would gently be lowered into the pool.
Yeah, that was exciting, particularly exciting because that was a population that we hadn't been able to deal with before. And to think that we could bring in children even mommies and their infant babies, and sit them on that floor and drop the floor 2 inches or 3 inches into the water. And they could play with their children in that warm water to start with, and then little by little, gradually increase the depth until they could begin to move their little limbs and actually experience activity. So that was a very wonderful part of the program that was brand new for everybody.
Why was water, being in an aquatic environment, so important in the progress of the clients in mobility?
Well, let me give you an example. Yeah. We had already developed quite a walking program for many paraplegics or partial spinal cord injuries or stroke. I mean, we had apparatus that would actually suspend them and over treadmills in the land base and try to get their legs, and the student therapists would move their legs, and we had machines they would lie down in, cross-crawl brain patterning machines, and they would be lying on their back looking up into a mirror overhead and simulating walking patterns. All that very exciting, but it never got them quite to walking. Close, but not quite. What the pools did with the underwater treadmills, the buoyancy of the water just took that extra weight. Gravity is the enemy of a disabled person. It eliminated the effect of gravity. And so these people began to walk in an upright position with gravity virtually removed, just like they were on these special machines, except now they were really burying their feet on the ground and taking steps and walking. And so our walking improvement exploded. The program, more and more people who were almost there suddenly were now walking. And that translated into walking on land eventually. So that's what a pool will do that nothing else can do. That's just one example, but the buoyancy of the water makes all the difference in the world. For people with arthritis, of course, we have nothing on land that can help them, nothing like the warm water movement in the warm water facility. The cool pool allows for MS people to function. That cool water takes their core temperature down so that the synapses in their body work more perfectly and enables them to exercise, gain strength. They can come out of that cool water and work in the environment for an hour, sometimes 2 hours, until that wears off. But the point is they're able to make gains during that time. They can gain strength. They can gain their flexibility back and change their lives back with the strength that they gain. So the pool is just so many opportunities. Everything that you can do on land is multiplied sometimes 10 times better in the water.
Now, you retired a few years ago. Do you come back and visit the centers?
Well, I did for about 10 years.
I know.
My wife was very much appreciative of all of that. Tanya was very kind to Tanya, who's our coordinator, always save room for my wife because she was dealing with cancer and her body was little by little deteriorating. And the only place she could feel good about movement was in the water. So in some respects, I didn't know it, but I built those pools for my wife too. So they were very important to me in lots of ways, not only for the community at large, for the students who were benefiting with knowledge that they couldn't get anyplace else, but my very own wife found life in the waters of those pools.
It was a gift he gave to her and a gift he gave to so many people. When you look back on your time here and in the centers, what do you think about the most?
People with disabilities are isolated. In many cases feel rejected. The center was a place of acceptance by the students who embraced them, who taught them, and created a bond with each other. So the atmosphere that was created in the center is unmatched. So I think in thinking about the center, I think about that atmosphere of achievement that was created like no other I'd ever seen anyplace else. And I had the joy of watching it all take place.
The legacy you built with that program continues. What future? I am struck. I'll give an example. A few years ago, I broke my kneecap, well, cracked my kneecap. I didn't break it all the way. I had to do physical therapy. And then, a couple of years later, I broke my ankle. Had to be restructured, and I now have a plate and a couple of screws. In both environments, I had to do physical therapy. In one of the centers, because one, I broke my kneecap out in the hallway, so that was workman's comp. The other one was at home. The ankle was at home. But when I did the physical therapy, I was in a center, a physical therapy center. And at one point, I was wearing a CSUN T-shirt. I said, "Oh, do you work at CSUN? Did you go to CSUN?" And I said, "I worked at CSUN." And the entire physical therapy area where the physical therapy was taking place, I was one of several clients, everyone but one was a CSUN graduate. Every single person in that facility but one. And I turned to the young man. They were all young at that point to me. And I said, "Oh, where did you go?" USC. And all the Matador said, "We let him work here." And I think about that as your legacy. Again, when I did physical therapy and I had to relearn to walk again when I broke my ankle, majority of the therapists had gone to CSUN. And that was considered the top tier in the training.
Well, we have many of the people who sign up for physical therapy are gravitating their lives in this direction because they have this experience. Not all of them get involved with us directly because we're in a different department, but probably the majority of them actually have the experience here. And this is where they, perhaps the light really comes on because they have not too many hands-on experiences are available to undergraduates.
Exactly.
But it is here. So they get a kind of a jump start on looking ahead at what might be in store for them. And their contribution begins early, and they get excited because they are seeing the results of their knowledge being carried out through these clients that we have here.
I have a lot of friends and whose children, they have cerebral palsy, they have other motor skill issues, who swear by the Brown Center, who just swear that their children's mobility went from being wheelchair dependent to able to use a walker over a period of time. The wheelchair's not gone, but it provided their children with a level of independence that they never thought was possible.
Yeah, it opens up a whole new world to them, and it's just a joy for those that we do get. My hope and dream was always that this would be duplicated all across the country. That was...
And it hasn't been?
Well, there is a program in San Diego State now.
Yeah.
One of my graduate students went there. 3 of my graduate students have programs in junior colleges that I'm aware of. And maybe you know more sense, I don't know. But they get very motivated when they're here, and they want to do the same thing. They want wherever they go, kind of like I did when I was a kid. That's what I wanted to do when I grow up. And I've talked to many of the graduate students about how you go about it, what do you do, how do you get started. It's not easy to buck administration, especially in an older school. Now, I was fortunate, very fortunate, to start in a brand new college. And I was given the free rein to develop my program, whatever I wanted. Mm-hmm. I was the expert suddenly. I was the student expert. And so I dreamed big. And the dreams kept coming, as you can see.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And they actually happened. But I wanted to talk about the importance of our donors, the need for funds, because it was built by, this facility was built by donations, and so we're not funded by the state of California like so many of the other facilities are. Mm-hmm. We are unique, we're different, and so we're not in the budget. So we have to do our own fundraising, and that kind of became my full-time job about the last 5-10 years of my life. But we really need foundations. We need people to come alongside on a regular basis to keep our funding going, because this is a big facility, needs to be kept up and operational to the highest standards, and that costs money. And we don't want to throw that cost on to the clients. That's the whole idea of them coming here. They're people, they can't afford private care. They can't afford this expensive therapy. And yet it's critical to them. It's essential. You couldn't donate to a better cause.
Dr. Britten, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I truly appreciate you telling us the history of the Brown Center and reminding us of how important it is, not just in the lives of our students, but in the community. And I thank all of you for joining us for this episode of Matador Memories.